Okay, and we begin part two. I am not sure how optimistic I am to get this in three parts, but we're going to try. So, anyway, we were talking about dietary nutrition guidelines from the government, and I would Google Healthy People 2020, and you will see, among others, dietary guidelines. There's also a lot of food-based guidelines. We'll talk about several of these coming up, and these are some great resources to have in your clinic or department for patients. So the recommended daily allowance history during the Second World War, they were trying to look at the health of all of our soldiers, and so that's kind of how how the government became involved in that way. Began way back in 1941, and they get revised every 5 years. So this recommended daily allowance basically covers 97 to 98 of healthy individuals. So when you have individuals who have significant health problems, the RDA may not apply to them, but it's just a good, very general overview as far as daily allowances. Daily values are something that are put on food labels, basically for anyone over 4 years old. So you can, we talked about nutrition requirements, and there are huge amounts of differences based on age and activity and health and so forth. So you can see this is very, very general. Looking at labels, I would imagine and assume that all of you have some ability to do this already. But starting with servings per container is huge. Again, this is, we again bring up health literacy, and the general public would not necessarily have any idea or not the same level of background that we might have as far as looking at labels. But so then you have caloric intake, you have the exact amount of fat, cholesterol, sodium, fiber, sugars, protein, and then often they will have that's where the RDAs come in as far as percentages of different vitamins and so forth that are listed there on the label. So here's an example of dietary guidelines. This was by the U.S. Dietary Association, Department of Health and Human Services, and they have a lot of research and a lot of science going into putting together these guidelines, basically trying to deal with nutrients, physical activity, certain foods that are encouraged, other foods that are discouraged, and so forth. Interestingly, when you look at who puts together these dietary guidelines, as I mentioned, scientists, nutrition experts, but then you also have the lobbyists. And there's a lot of big money that are involved with shaping these dietary guidelines, such as the National Dairy Council, Soft Drink Association, American Meat Association or Institute. So these are obviously people with agendas, with specific desires, but they're also involved with putting together those guidelines. Here's Healthy People 2020. That link may or may not work, but if you Google Healthy People 2020, you'll be able to look at these governmental objectives for health. Leading health indicators, and none of this is going to be a shock, and there was no change from 2010 to 2020. And so nothing really shocking on this. Physical activity, controlling obesity, controlling tobacco and substance use, sexual behavior can certainly lead to health, and so forth down the list. Here's the first resource that I think is really valuable. Even you can obtain flyers with this on that, or you can even print out the choosemyplate.gov and have that on your wall in your clinic. There's the URL here, choosemyplate.org. And it just shows the proportions. A lot of people's plates don't look like this, and it's all protein with no or a little tiny bit of fruits and vegetables. So just that visual can help individuals. And this also talks about serving sizes. Once again, this may be obvious to us, but to a lot of our patients, maybe not so at all. So another example of something that could be available to patients either as a flyer for them to take as desired or up on a wall in a clinic. The Mediterranean Food Guide Pyramid is very popular, and basically looking at the lack of cardiovascular disease in certain parts of the world. And the Mediterranean diet, certainly that part of the world has much lower prevalence. And so that's kind of why this diet got attention. Here's one example of, down at the bottom, we have grains, and then we have fruits, veggies, and beans, and we move up the pyramid. Here's another example of this would be a great thing to print out and even frame and have on your wall if you're so inclined. Some other lists that are nice to, someone may be looking at this pyramid saying, wow, I need to eat more fish, or I need to eat more veggies. And then this can be helpful just to give individuals ideas, specific examples of, oh yeah, I forgot all about cherries. I haven't had a cherry in years, or whatever it might be. So some other specific dietary approaches. The DASH diet is basically low sodium diet, trying to decrease hypertension. So you'll see that. You'll see a lot of your patients that are on a DASH or a low sodium diet. Here's another Dr. Willett from Harvard School of Public Health, who put together this pyramid. When you start looking at all these pyramids, there really are just small differences between them. Usually small amounts of red meat at the top and tons of fruits and veggies at the bottom. That's kind of the general idea of these pyramids. This is from the National Cancer Institute, just talking about the value of fruits and vegetables. And there are a couple links in here. This is another resource if you're so interested, talking about fruits and veggies and some of the dietary benefits. Another list of, if you're trying to work on having more of the specific colors in your diet, then this is a nice list of some of the different fruits and vegetables that fall in those categories. When planning a diet, obviously you need to try to have it be as individualized as possible and trying to maintain a variety. I think all of you as students, and myself included, that's kind of an ongoing opportunity, we'll say, to become aware of different types of foods, and have eating healthy be a fun journey instead of painful responsibility. This video here is really valuable, showing the different benefits of different vegetables. A lot of people use different apps to track their intake. MyFitnessPal is one that allows you to input all of your intake on a daily basis. And a lot of these, the technology is really helpful. When you have typical foods that you eat, the app will track that for you. Also, you can scan labels with this specific app and get, so you can literally pick up what you're eating and scan it right into your app, so you have that intake logged. If I would definitely recommend looking up Dr. Greger, in case this link doesn't work. He's a very entertaining lecturer. There's a nuts video by him. He has several videos, and it's quite compelling. The health promoting properties and disease fighting properties of so many fruits and vegetables that we can eat. So I would recommend watching that. Then we get into nutrition trends. And so there's always all kinds of diets that are in vogue at a given time. And so you'll have many patients that will ask you, what do you think about this diet or that approach? So it's nice to be a little bit informed so that we can at least give them some input. Nutrigenomics is definitely kind of the wave of the future, using genetic information to see how specific foods will interact with our body. So we look at general nutrition guidelines, and we see these food pyramids, and we know that, generally speaking, fruits and vegetables are very beneficial. Trying to somewhat limit red meat is also beneficial. Nutrigenomics gives a patient the ability to truly see how a given diet is going to affect with their body and their system. And this came about looking at Native Americans in different parts of the country, and just seeing, kind of similar to the Mediterranean diet, lots of good health in that part of the world. And so what are those people eating? And so looking at different groups of Pima Indians. In one part of the country in New Mexico, they're lean and great health. In other parts of the country, there's a lot of obesity and diabetes and heart disease. And so that's kind of how that interest was generated. How do uh, two groups of people have such differing responses to intake? And so that's kind of why scientists started looking into nutrigenomics. And so looking at a lot of genetic research, they were able to see that some people will really react favorably to this kind of diet, while others, it's not going to hurt them, but won't help them as much as a slightly different approach. And so that's kind of where that came from. But, general point, nutrition there's mountains and mountains of evidence showing that it does matter what we put in our bodies, and proper nutrition can truly make a big difference in, we all have different genetic backgrounds, and understanding that we can kind of strategically approach our diets. So I have a couple of examples here of how this is truly in the last 10 years an area that has been increasing in kind of in research and interest. And what happens with so many things, the research comes out first, and then companies get involved and make it more marketable and accessible to the general public. And so the old guideline would just talk very generally about, look at these public health models, look at these food pyramids. The suggested new approach is to kind of customize it and look at our specific genetic makeup. So here's an example of a company where you order this, it comes in the mail, you put a saliva sample and you send it in, you order, you spit, and then you discover. And for this company, $99 to $250 will give you access to not only ancestry, but also some of the genetic information related to diets. So actually, here's this one here, existing DNA, and then on the far right, DNA kit plus 5 recipes. So it looks like that's GenoPalette is the name of that company. But that's, if you're interested in looking into that, you can Google nutrigenomics and find out what the latest companies are that are coming out with some of these advances. And so basically, this just kind of shows that, so a patient with diabetes, some respond very well to high carbohydrate, low fat diet. Others do better with a moderate carbohydrate, moderate fat diet. So that's an example of, you have your general approach to a patient with diabetes, but after having this genotype testing, they can find out what will be the best approach for that individual. And same with hypertension. Some do best with low sodium. Others are not affected at all by sodium levels, but they need different levels of potassium, magnesium, and so forth. So we have a few of these examples. Coronary heart disease or chronic heart disease. Again, differences based on genotype as far as what's going to be the best diet for them. Same with cancer and celiac patients. And so, and also osteoporosis. So these are just all, you can read up on the specifics, but the basic concept is the genotype information really helps to customize even further and help our patients. So then we get to gut health. This is also an area that's been expanding dramatically in recent years. And you see the incredible amounts of money that are spent with healthcare costs on gastroesophageal reflux disorder, irritable bowel syndrome, and so forth. Gastrointestinal health, there are all kinds of different things that can go wrong and reasons why patients will benefit from focusing on their gut health.